Well, thank you so much. Everybody hear me okay? Are we good
Yes,
to
sir.
go? Okay. Thank you, Eric. My name's Chris Reddy. I'm an alcoholic, and I'm very grateful to be here today. Thank you. Let me get some of this. Let me get some of this stuff kind of out of the way there. I I'm an alcoholic, man, and I'm really grateful to be here. Thank you so much. It was I think I was scheduled to do this in September. The weekend kind of cleared up a little bit, and it just happened to be chatting with Eric a little bit over the yesterday, so it worked out perfect. So thank you for letting me be here. A couple of things that I do try to kind of lead out with is I have no idea what you or anybody else like should or shouldn't do in Alcoholics Anonymous. Like I have no idea what's right or wrong around here. Like I don't know what God's will is for you or myself. I don't know about any of that stuff. But what I do believe in is this big book that I was thrown into on essentially night one of introduced myself, being introduced to this program. And it seems like, and it's just my own thing. It seems like if I study the history of Alcoholics Anonymous, the forewords, the preface, everything, if I go to Akron, Ohio, if I hear about what the pioneers did, and before there was even a meeting or before there was even a book, there were people that were just like very, pardon me, it would appear like relieved and grateful, and they didn't even know what they had, but they know that, like when I talked to that guy, I felt a little bit better. So a couple of years ago, I sponsored a guy that played baseball in Ohio. He had to make a bunch of amends. And so my youngest son, who's grown up in Alcoholics Anonymous around, me, we all just flew out to Ohio with him. I live in Sacramento, California. So it really was like if the running joke with me out here is watch out if Chris says it's just around the corner because you just never know. The reality is, man, is I would have gone just like hours and hours away for a drink, a date with a pretty girl, a job, something financially competitive or whatever. But so I'll do pretty much anything around Alcoholics Anonymous. I have the greatest time. And so we were in Ohio, and it was the first time that I had been to Dr. Bob's house, and we were touring the house, and there was this little part, the docent, the guy that was showing us around, and my great grand sponsor lives there in Akron, and it was just such a great an amazing trip. We were there for Alex. He was making his amends. He was there for a week, making amends and doing this thing, and we ended up, one second, sorry. uh so we ended up on this tour. And there was the part of it where Bob and Ann were going to lose their house again. And, Bob had started like just not even knowing really what he was doing, just trying to help this Sister Ignatia lady down at the hospital. And off they went. And Bob would just tell Ann, like, I don't know what's going on. I don't know how that's all going to work out, but I seem to stay sober when I'm doing this. I seem to stay sober, and everything seems to just kind of work out. So I've got all the trust and faith in God. So I love hearing those stories. I love knowing about the history of Alcoholics Anonymous, all the near misses, the accidents, the is it odd, is it God, all that stuff. But at the end of the day, when I was shown this thing, and I'll get into it more a little bit later, it was expressly concerned. Like they told me, they said, Chris, I don't know what's right or wrong around here. The same thing I just said. All I know, Chris, is that when we do this thing, when we just try to help these people, everything always seems to work out. And they kept showing me this stuff in the book, and it seems like you can't go more than a couple of pages. We're really interested in knowing what your work is like with alcoholics, impressing upon them that they must still do likewise with others, on and on and on. Intensive work with another alcoholic. These two men, like in a vision to you, the wheels are falling off. They knew they frantically had to search with a work with another alcoholic. So when I read in there in the doctor's opinion, and it talks about if we appear somewhat sentimental, let us stand with us a while on the firing line, see the despairing wives, the little children, and wonder why we're not back in this thing. I paraphrased quite a bit, so I apologize for that. That rubs somebody the wrong way. But that's my deal, right? Is like, I don't know, man. All I know is that Alcoholics Anonymous, never mind the 75% success rate, 66, whatever. Alcoholics Anonymous is 100% effective to me, right? And I've seen it be 100% effective in others. And all I know is like, dude, I don't know what's right or wrong around here. This is what I'm doing. There's always room in the car. Let's just come on in. Let's just stop talking for a little bit, get in the car, maybe just shut up with all the love in my heart. Just quit talking. We're just going to go try and help people. And at the end of the day, I always check in with these guys like these guys checked in with me. I'm always going to go like, dude, how do you feel right now? I'm like, man, you know what? I feel a little bit better. Okay, cool, brother. Like, you never saw that coming. And I'm like, no, I didn't. Okay, cool. Let's just try to do that tomorrow. Very, very simple. Very, very simple. And it seems like the more that I did that I got into that book, the more the dots were connected. And the more I started to have the spiritual experience, the more I started to become more conscious of this power that I don't even know is there, but it is there. And it's just been the most beautiful ride. My sobriety date is June 2nd, 2004. I just celebrated a 21-year anniversary. My sponsor's name is Victor Silva, lives here in El Dorado Hills in California. And my home group is a Way Out Men's group. I make a Way Out Men's on Monday night. Honestly, no matter what, unless I'm sick or traveling or there's something crazy with the kid, or the family or anything like that. There's a speaker meeting on Friday night that I attend regularly, and I hit a men's meeting on Saturday morning. I have pretty much 3 regular meetings that I hit week in and week out, for the most part, no matter what, unless I'm sick traveling or there's something going on with the family. I have a sponsor who leads the way, who's a phenomenal member of Alcoholics Anonymous and will always battle me for the craziest guy in the room. Like, he's just an amazing man. And I love talking to him. We have Zoom meetings with him and then my grand sponsor, Frank, in Arkansas, once a month. So, and I work with a ton of guys. And, I remember there was a guy, in LA a long time ago. And Clancy used to always say, I'm just one short when it comes to sponsoring people. I'm just one guy short. So I'm just going to keep doing that, keep doing that. And that's been kind of the journey here in Alcoholics Anonymous for me. My story, briefly, is that I come from a broken home. This doesn't make me an alcoholic or anything like that. I come from a lot of violence. I come from a lot of divorce. I come from a lot of moving. I come from a lot of reasons to get you to possibly feel sorry for me. I come from manipulation. I come from all that stuff. And, I was raised for the most part. I was raised by the most part by my grandmother and my grandfather. My grandma was, she loved a bunch of stuff in her life, but she loved red hair dye. She loved silk muumuus. She loved her some Jesus. And she just loved the heck out of me. She was born and raised in Joplin, Missouri. So she was a Midwestern gal. And then my grandfather was from Melrose, Minnesota, population like 50. My grandfather was like born and they gave him like 5 jobs. He was just an amazing guy. And that dude loved the Minnesota Vikings, catfishing my grandma and myself, and in some sort of accommodation there, right? But those were the kindest people. I remember in between my mom and the divorces, the stepdads, the relationships, the turmoil there, I would always get dropped off at my grandparents' house. And I remembered like some of the best, memories that I had as a child was sitting on my grandmother's lap and just rocking back and forth. And she had this flower print rocking chair in the wood panel living room, walls, and just watching Samson and Delilah, The Robe, like all these, the Ten Commandments, these old school like Christian movies. And I remember that she had these nails on her hands, man. They were like from God himself. Like, she would just scratch my back for hours and just rock me back and forth. It was very, very peaceful. And then, my grandfather, like, he was a big, like, tickle guy. He was a man's man, but every once in a while he would tickle me, man. And he would commercial time and he'd get on his knees and he would tickle me. And I'd say, I can't breathe. I can't breathe. And he's like, you're talking, you can breathe. And he'd keep tickling me. And it was a really great time with them. It was past the potatoes and the pot roast and all of that stuff. And I had a group of friends in that neighborhood. And then there would be a day where my mom would show up and with a different fella, in a different car, and my bags would magically be packed and I would go off and live with them. and it wouldn't take long. There would be a fight at 3 a.m. There was a lot of alcoholism in that house, a lot of heavy drinking, drug abuse, all that stuff. And there would be an impending breakup or divorce, and I would go back and live with my grandparents. I tell you this story because years later, when you guys approached me with a solution out of the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous, and you started reading that book with me, you'd read it a page or two at a time. I'm a guy, when I got here, I didn't have to go to 90 meetings in 90 days. I didn't have to write my life story down. I was point blankly told, Chris, if you have what I have and you're just not drinking, you're going to be like dead before you know it. Like there's no way out of it. If you're a real alcoholic, and I'm going to show you in our literature and I'm going to explain to you with my experience, and hopefully we can have a phenomenon of identification what that means. It doesn't just mean that you drink a lot. It means that, Chris, you've somehow passed over a line where literally only an act of God is going to allow you not just to stay sober, but to feel something content on the inside. And what I can tell you is that I share those stories about my grandparents because even as a young child, even as in that situation, I was always seeking a sense of ease and comfort. And when I work with new people in Alcoholics Anonymous, I spend a lot of time on what were you like, dude? Like before you even drank. My life has been broken up apparently into three categories: what I was like and how I lived before I drank, my drinking career, and then since I've been sober. Very, very simply put, I've needed a solution in all three phases of that life, of this journey. As I sit here right now, I need some sort of medicine to deal with what you guys have explained to me as a spiritual malady that only a real alcoholic has. I've looked for some sort of God in some sort of form my whole life. And early on, man, like from the earliest that I can remember, and I didn't hit me right away. I'm not going to school the next day asking people in third grade, how's your spiritual malady today? I'm not talking about my grandmother, coach, the sense of ease and comfort that was once, felt by my grandmother's back scratches. But when I come in here and we talk about the connecting of dots, these are the things that come to me. These are the when I come out of this unconscious state and I'm aware of this power and I feel the nearness of my creator, these are the things that become alive. These are the lessons. This is what happens. Later on, I was about 14 years old. My grandmother had recently passed away, and my friend Brad and I started, we were going to a party one night, and we split a 40 of Old English 800. So roughly 20 ounces, give or take each. We went to this party this night. My experience of the first night that I drank this night was that I didn't urinate on myself. I didn't make a fool out of myself. I didn't have an initial phenomenon of craving. I didn't break in, it wasn't like the days of wine and roses, you know what I mean? I wasn't smashing plants everywhere. I wasn't doing any of these things. But all I remember feeling when I left this place that we drank at on the way to this little neighborhood party, I just felt, ah, I just felt, I've heard speakers over the years that it's like my shoulders went from my ears to their normal state. Like I was able to be out in that world. And I went to that party. And what I can tell you, man, is like, I just couldn't wait to do it again. That was it. That if I had one thing that I remember about that night more than anything, I just couldn't wait for the night to end so I could try this thing again tomorrow. And I started doing that right away, literally. Like I don't know for sure if it was exactly the next day, but it was right then. I started drinking, and then I'm hanging out with these, with my normal friends, right? And it's like we're a little bit young, and we're drinking Boone's Farm, we're drinking Cisco and Mad Dog, and fancy stuff like E&J brandy and pop off vodka, and we're drinking. And what I remember was that there was always like a reason to be drinking. There was always a reason to get the booze. I grew up by the river, and we go down to the river, and we start drinking. But it seemed like once I started to drink, it seemed like everything else just kind of like went away, and just drinking was paramount. Like I didn't really want to later on in life start when I started urinating on myself and vomiting and making a fool out of myself and all that. I remember thinking, man, like I don't want to overshoot the mark. but it started to get a little bit more and more frequent. These friends that I had politely or started like gently avoiding me. So I had to start hanging out with a new group of friends. I started hanging out with these criminals, these little street gang guys around the corner from our house that we had known off and on, but those were the bad guys. Like nobody hung out with them. Those guys were in and out of jail already and in juvenile hall, and they had older brothers that were like big time California prison inmates, and there were murders and there were robberies and there was just, I mean, it was messed up. Like a mile away from where we're just hanging out at the river, drinking, doing rope swing stuff, trying to get a girl to talk to us, and I start hanging out with this other group of guys. I start hanging out with this other group of guys. And what I can tell you is that there wasn't really any reason to drink after that. And what I mean by that is we were drinking no matter what. There wasn't like a special occasion. It wasn't like, hey, go get some beers. We're going to fire up the barbecue and play basketball. Grab some beers. We'll meet you down at the river. We're just going to go float. It was that. It was we were drinking and doing all that other stuff from sun up to sundown, day in, day out, days, weeks without sleep, all of that stuff. We were committing like heavy duty, aggressive felonies, like violence. I mean, people were getting arrested. And shortly after my 18th birthday, I got arrested. I started going to county jail. By the time I was 19, I was in state prison, and I was in prison off and on for 8 years. And by the time I got out of prison, it just really wasn't fun anymore. And I swore to God, and I tell you guys this stuff because first of all, pretty much everybody on this call, I would bet probably deserved to get arrested a lot more than we did. And so, yeah, so you're welcome. I'm just the big dumb criminal that doesn't get away with nothing. So, but at the end of the day, I do always try to look for that phenomenon of identification with people. So when I'm talking to somebody, just like our book talks about, find out how get to know this person, find out how you would like to be approached. I usually, in my experience with Alcoholics Anonymous, there's certain things that I can read out of that book. There's certain things that I can talk to a newcomer or somebody that maybe has been around. I really like the introduction at this meeting too. Like if you've gone to these meetings and you don't know or whatever, like I love in the forewords when it talks about it at its core, it remains simple and personal. Recovery begins when one alcoholic, me, shares experience, strength, and hope with you. It's just very, very simple. And it usually happens over a cup of coffee or maybe after that meeting. And it usually happens with the spirit of AA number 3, that beautiful painting with those men in suits, like leaned over, like with intent, with purpose, trying to get that guy from the bed to the chair. I was taught from day one, that's the goal here, Chris. If you're grateful, if you're happy, if you feel relief, you're welcome. Don't let it end with you. Do not let it end with you. I've got people on this call that I work with, like they hear me say that all the time. Hashtag, just dude, no worries. Just don't let it end with you. And you know what, man? Like my experience is that I can start talking to somebody, and whether or not they've been to prison or not, I love this too. Hey, brother, how long have you wanted to quit drinking? Oh, man, 6 months is, pretty short amount of time. Years is usually the answer. I'm like, for years, you've wanted to quit drinking. I wanted to quit drinking for years. I wanted to quit hurting people for years. I wanted to quit. We talk about this not being a frothy emotional appeal meeting. I love that. I love knowing that I am completely effed no matter what. I love knowing that moral and philosophical convictions galore. I can't live up to them much by wishing or trying. I had to have God's help. I don't know any of that stuff when I'm brand new here. That's why, all these sayings and all this stuff, like none of that, for me, my experience, none of that matters. It doesn't matter. I've taken the most willing people to the most solution-based meeting and they're drunk in a week. And I've taken the person that there's no way this guy's going to get sober. And I take him to just some clubhouse that I've never even been to, and that guy's out like, doing God's work. I have no idea. My job is to get them around us. Point blank. That's it. Hey, dude, like this is me. What's up with you? Like, where do you live? What's going on? This and that. Let's read this book. And in so doing, I get that phenomenon of identification with people. You've never been to prison? Great, no problem. You've never been arrested? Cool. You've never had any scrapes with the law? Great. How long have you wanted to quit drinking? 2 years, 3 years, 5 years? How long have you wanted her to stop crying over your behavior? How long have you wanted to start keeping a promise? How long have you wanted to stop embarrassing your kid? Now we start talking. Now, this is with that simple kit of spiritual tools laid at our feet. This is where the alcoholic, this is our gift. This is what it was shown to me. This is the blessing. When you guys tell me, Chris, you've been blessed to be a blessing, this is what it is. I can crawl into that person's life and I can look at them and I can look at that wall of tears behind their eyes and I can relate and I can be there and I can be freaking honest and I can say, this is what I've been doing, man. Let's just try this. Are you willing to try this? And if they're not, my book, the way I interpret it, is very, very clear. I shouldn't push. I shouldn't prod. If they're not interested, okay, my hat's off to you, man. And then, if I keep following up with them or whatever. But at the end of the day, I love that. I love talking about our problems piling up on us and becoming astonishingly difficult to solve. I love I love reading in that book about all the problems and all the change of environment, all the different things that we've tried. I love reading in that book and sharing my experience about how for the only thing that seemed to work was when I just shut up and I got in your car, I read this book and I went and tried to help somebody. And I said a prayer that was, completely inadequate in my opinion, but God didn't care because this kid was talking to him. Like these are the things that started to happen for me. My experience was that I was faced with another parole violation, and my parole officer explained to me that he had somewhere for me to go if I didn't find like a recovery house. So I found a place. The reason that I'm here today, I had a grant sponsor from back east a long time ago. His name was Tom Flynn, and he was one of the most beautiful men I've ever met. I talk about Tom all the time. And Tom used to tell me, he used to say, Chris, the message of Alcoholics Anonymous is so powerful that it can be carried by a mongrel dog to a person that doesn't know they need it, let alone know that they want it. God doesn't care about what you think you need. God doesn't care about what you want. God's got a plan for you, and God loves you, and you're God's kids, and you're God's favorite. And I remember that Tom used to always talk like that. And I was in a recovery house and I wasn't looking to do the steps and I wasn't looking to join you guys and I didn't want to drink coffee at 8 p.m. and I didn't want to help you move because it was good for my soul. I didn't want to do any of that stuff. I went to a recovery house because a month in a recovery house that was air conditioned with natural, like biological women and better food was better than another year in prison and sweating it out with, all the other stuff. That's what ended up getting me into a recovery house. I went into a recovery house and I was stone cold sober for 2 weeks. Every time that I went to prison, people like I was always, one of the cool guys on the yard, right? I'll brag about how cool I was in the state of California penal system. I was never ever sober. I was always had a plan. I'm always going to get a job and a girl, and I'm going to just put that booze down when I get out. And every time I would get out of prison, despite all those plans that we make, see, my problem is that after every thousandth last drink, I always take one more first one. And every first drink that I've taken after my thousandth last drink, it always makes sense in my mind. Every stupid thing that I've ever done, will do, or whatever, it always makes sense. That's my main problem. My book tells me, lack of power, and this thing is going to help me solve my problem, singular. And my singular problem is that I suffer from a spiritual malady. I'm empty on the inside. And to fill that hole in my soul, my head spins me all kinds of BS and it justifies and rationalizes and or leads me down a rabbit hole of what I think I need to feel okay. And then I get those things. And it's been doing it to me my whole life. That's why I've been with that girl that wasn't a person, it was a life preserver. And that's why I've stolen and that's why I've lied. And that's why I've been a professional consumer. That's why I wake up in your house and I sleep in your bed and I eat your food and I sell you hope. That's the worst character flaw that I have is I know exactly what to say to get what I want. And I've done it over and over and over. My grandfather, Melrose, Minnesota, population 50, Air Force war hero, just the most beautiful man ever. What this disease did to him was it caused him to grab those big bare hands and hold me up against the wall, tears in his eyes, screaming like your grandmother would be ashamed of you. You're just, why can't you just leave me alone? Why can't you just stop coming around? And the best I got is an untreated alcoholic searching for this spiritual malady, searching for some kind of a solution. Is I know, Pop, just give me $20 and I'll leave you alone. You know, like that's what comes to you in Alcoholics Anonymous. And stone cold sober, I'm in this place and I'm sober for 2 weeks and I'm going to your meetings and I'm hugging my inner child during the day and I'm putting the plug in the jug and I'm saying all these things and I'm learning about relapse prevention and self-knowledge and trauma and all these things which have value. I'm not knocking them, but this is, if I appear somewhat sentimental, that stuff wasn't helping me, man. That stuff wasn't letting me sleep. That stuff wasn't giving me peace. What ended up happening to me was that a man came in on an H&I panel. And this man came in, and after the meeting, I went to my room, and I remember that I had just gotten the only room in this facility with carpet, and it was a big deal if you were in that facility. You got the carpeted room, but and you were top notch. You were from the knees to the toes, man. Like you were great. It was all good. And this guy came in, and his name's Sean. He's very active in the Pacific group, and he's just a phenomenal guy. And Sean's like, "Hey, brother, how you doing?" And I was like, "Oh, I'm good, dude." You know, like, and I'm rolling a Bugler cigarette, and I just gotten some top ramen soup, and like, you know, I'm like big time guy. And Sean's like, "Man, that's great." I'm like, "Dude, you want a cigarette? I'll roll you one." He's all, "No, no, I don't smoke. I don't smoke." I was like, "You want a soup? You hungry? I got some chips." And he's like, "No, no, no, I'm good. I'm good." I was like, he's like, "How you doing?" I'm like, "Dude, I'm doing really good, man. I just got this room today. It's got, carpet. It's the only room with the carpet and this and that." And Sean, he's like, "Oh, wow, that's really impressive. Like you have the only room in this recovery house with carpet. That's awesome." And he starts talking to me and what are you doing here? He does what we do, right? He's getting to know me. And he's like, "Hey, a bunch of us are going after this meeting. We're going to go to the movies. Do you want to go?" And I said, "I can't. I have to do a pass plan. It gets really complicated. I can go to the movies probably about 2 weeks." And his whole demeanor changed, right? And he's like, "You're a grown ass man and you can't go to the movies when you want. You just got done telling me how good you were doing for 5 minutes. It doesn't sound like you're doing too good to me." And I don't have any prison gang homeboys around. I don't have any street thugs around. I don't have anybody to impress. It was just that beautiful moment, man, that happens, I think, and it happens often, where God just kind of says, "You know what? I got other stuff for you to do, Chris." He just kind of held my heart, just took the words right out of me. And Sean, with that same new serious demeanor, he was just like, "Look, dude, I don't know you. It's all good. I came here to try to help somebody tonight. Are you alcoholic? Do you want to be done for good and for all? Do you want to quit drinking? Do you want a new way of life? Do you want to see what this program can offer you?" And I didn't have any words. And the best thing that Sean did was he just turned around and walked away. Now, I'm not like, I'm not a guy that celebrates in the meanness of sometimes, we hear these stories. "Oh, my sponsor told me to shut up and there's this and this." I come from that sponsorship, but I never ever did not feel loved. I didn't feel like these guys were trying to hurt me. I never felt like when I grew up in Alcoholics Anonymous. And I always tell the people that I sponsor, man, like, "Look, this is coming from a place of love. I'd rather step on your toes and walk on your grave." And that's Sean just turned around and walked away. He didn't pat me on the butt. He didn't do anything. And it was one of those moments where I just kind of reached out and I was like, "Wait, wait, wait." And he turned around. He's like, "Are you done for good and for all? Do you want to quit drinking forever? Do you want a new way of life? Do you want to see what we're doing here?" And I said, "I do, man." And he's like, "Cool, dude, grab your book." And the other demeanor came up, and I was like, "Well, what do you mean?" And he's like, "Well, we're going to start reading right now." I was like, "Right now?" I was like, "Man, I don't know." He's all, "Dude, if you got what I got, and you've just been drinking or you've just been sober, like, how you sleeping?" I remember him asking me that. I'm like, I'm not sleeping, man." He's all, "Yeah." He's all, "If you had cancer, would you wait to go to chemo?" And I said, "No." He's all, "All right, then this is the first thing. Why don't you just quit talking for a little bit, just grab your book and say, okay, meet me in the kitchen." And we started reading the doctor's opinion that night. We started reading about men and women drink essentially because of the effect produced by alcohol. And Sean started sharing his experience growing up as a kid in Santa Cruz, California. If you've never been to Santa Cruz, California, It's a little south of San Francisco, so there's people with money there, and it's absolutely beautiful. Big giant trees on one side of the road and the Pacific Ocean on the other. It's absolutely beautiful. And his parents had been together, and they hadn't been divorced, and he didn't get beat, and he didn't hang out with with gangs, and he didn't go to prison, and he didn't do all that. But when he shared how he was as a child, he had to do good in that soccer game. He had to get invited to that party that he didn't want to go to. That girl had to share her chicken nuggets with him in middle school. He had to have that skateboard deck. He had to have that pair of shoes. He had to have something. He never felt settled. He felt restless, irritable, and discontent as we read it. And he talked about men and women drinking essentially for the effect produced by alcohol. He said, Chris, what if I told you, quite possibly, perhaps consider this? He started with these perhaps consider this statements on the first night of my journey in Alcoholics Anonymous. He said, Chris, perhaps consider this, that you drink for a spiritual effect, not just a physical effect. The physical effect, I mean, duh. Anybody that drinks a little bit is going to have a physical effect. We're literally putting poison in our body. It's going to change what's going on. But something inside of us, that sense of ease and comfort it comes at once by taking a few drinks. That's that other thing that I can have with that person, that new person. Brother, if you can't relate to that, I don't know how I'm going to help you. If your life hasn't been bumpy, then that's fine. Maybe it hasn't been bumpy. Maybe you've never had any problems. That's fine. You don't have to be a prison gang guy or a DUI lady, or you don't have to have these. But dude, if you can't realize, for me, it is a huge red flag if a person can't relate to the restless and irritability of just being stone cold sober. Later on in the book, when I read about Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, I always point out with the new man, keep in mind that Dr. Jekyll is completely sober when he turns into Mr. Hyde. He has an unrest. There's something inside of him that makes him want to drink that elixir. There's something inside of me. I know I shouldn't drink. I know I shouldn't do crime. I knew I shouldn't hang out with those people. I know I should go to work. I know. I get it. I get it. I just can't not do it. And that's the problem. And I don't know that. I don't know about the value of being powerless. And I start to go down this rabbit hole with Sean on that first night. And a lot of it is similar to Alice in Wonderland, if I think about it. I read that novel not too long ago, and it is a beautiful story about alcoholism and recovery. When I go down the rabbit hole, I'm just at the beginning of the story, Alice is just hanging out by this creek, and she's got her cat, and then the rabbit runs by, and she doesn't even think anything weird with the rabbit at first, but then it starts talking, it pulls out a watch, and now she's like, uh-oh, and then down the rabbit hole she goes. And for me, the rabbit hole is when I first started drinking that first night. It turned me into another world. It transported me to another place. My sponsor says a lot that when I pick up a bottle, I pick up a way of life. And what I didn't know is that what Sean was doing on this first night was he was showing me a new way of life. I was picking up the book. I was picking up the steps. I was picking up the history of this program. I was becoming an actual member of Alcoholics Anonymous. I wasn't just going to your meetings. And I wasn't just looking at the pretty girls. And I wasn't looking at your motorcycles. I don't even ride motorcycles. I never have. But I was an expert an hour after I heard something about it. And I'm going down this rabbit hole of drinking. And I get to this corridor when Alice lands. And it's lined with all these doors. And the only door that's open, she's too big for it. So here I go, man. I don't know that I got to take these steps to get me right-sized enough to find this connection with God. But if you remember the story of Alice in Wonderland, the elixir showed up to her when she spun around and started crying. She was completely hopeless and powerless. She was ever going to get out of that hallway. And that's what I found that first night. I found the value of knowing that I can't do this on my own and that I do need help. And I started hearing things like, you may not want what we have, but just be happy knowing that you don't want what you have. And it just wants you to quit talking, Chris. And we started reading that book. We started reading about the phenomenon of craving. We started reading about spiritual malady. We started reading about being an outright mental defect. We started reading about not being able to differentiate the truth from the false. And I started connecting dots there. And just like that first night when I drank, when I was left with Sean that first night, I couldn't wait to call you again. I couldn't wait for the night to end so I could jump up out of my bed and for whatever reason, call AA because I'm winning at life that much. right? We got done. We started reading. We finished reading the doctor's opinion that night. He asked me to read more about alcoholism, and we were going to talk about step two. We were going to talk about the mental issues, with what I've got on my disease. We talked, and I had no idea about, that an alcoholic is somebody that just drinks a lot. I'll be honest with you, I'm not a controversial guy. I'm really not. I believe that people who are suffering from alcoholism that never even drank, never will. You know what I mean? The reality is that I suffer from a spiritual malady. This is what it's done for me. The problem is that I do drink a lot, and I don't want to drink a lot, and I can't not drink, and I can't not think, and I have no idea how sick I am, and I have no idea that I can't get myself out of this hole. And what was groundbreaking on the first night was just getting sober wasn't going to do it. For a guy like me, I'm sitting around going crazy because for years people have been telling me to get sober. Well, here I am, 2 weeks sober. I had the only carpeted room in this place. Why am I not feeling better? I could quote a couple of things. I'm hugging my inner child, and I know about relapse prevention and self-esteem. Why aren't I not feeling any better? It's very confusing. It's torturous. And thank God somebody knows about primary purpose. And I am a little bit of a romantic. I feel like the new people in Alcoholics Anonymous, like, dude, I'm going to hunt you down a little bit, and I am going to stalk you a little bit, and I am going to get a little weird with it here and there because you know what, man, I feel like you've cashed in everything to get into the rooms, and just like Shoemaker's "Stand by the Door" poem, like that's my job, that's my purpose here. I've been blessed to be a blessing. Too much has been given, much is expected, and that's my job to try, at least to try to get you into this book so you can have your own experience. I'm not qualified. Sean's not qualified. What did this dude do? He approached me at a meeting and he read a freaking book with me. And 45 minutes later, I had hope and I had contentment and I wasn't restless and I wasn't irritable and I wasn't discontented. Why don't I do that more? And I thanked Sean that night. I said, dude, thank you so much for helping me tonight, man. And Sean said, dude, make no mistake about it. A, you're welcome. And B, I came down here to help anybody. It just happened to be you, and it might end up being your lucky night. I started calling Sean. He told me to call him at a certain time every day because I wasn't doing anything. And I didn't know that Sean went to school an hour and a half north of Sacramento. He was in the middle of a construction management major program at Chico State. And that dude drove an hour and a half south with these other guys at H&I, these evil big book thumper people. And, he did this just to try to read this book with somebody. So I do tell people, I don't care. I don't care how inconvenienced you are in Alcoholics Anonymous. The book tells me in a roundabout way, the harder it is, the better it is. And I interpret that when I read about the amends, when it talks about why is it much more harder to go to an enemy than a friend, but we find it much more beneficial. That's because I need God a whole lot more. And the longer I do it and the more I do it and the more convenient I am, dude, the guy that lives down the street from, there's a guy on this call that drives, I think, an hour, hour and a half every Saturday to go to this men's meeting. And he'll do that for anybody. Like, so you might mess around with Chris Reddy in California and get, like I am right around the corner at Chris. That's 3 hours away. Okay, well, we'll leave early. Like it's just all good. I start hanging out with these guys, man, and I got these big problems in this recovery house that I'm living in. Like these guys are doubling up on corn dogs for dinner, and I only get one, and they got two or three. And Sean would pick me up, and we'd go to some treatment center, some homeless shelter, and Sean would be like, "How was your day?" And I'm like, "Dude, I'm really fired up, man." He's like, "What's going on in there? What's up?" And I'm like, "Well, there's this guy, and there's this corn dog situation." And he's like, "You're pissed off about a corn dog. You got a corn dog resentment." Chris, we're going to talk all about that. We're going to talk all about your corn dog resentment. But first, we're going to go to this homeless shelter and try to help these drunks. Okay. And I'm like, all right, man, but I'm paying you the big bucks, sponsor. And we're going to talk about this, right? Because I'm all fired up about it. And we would go to these meetings and I'd be on Sean's hip and he'd be like, go talk to that guy. Go help somebody. Go help somebody. I'm like, what do I do? He's like, just get to know him. Pretend it's a pretty girl and you're trying to pick her up in a bar or something. I'm like, okay. And I go, hey, man, how's it going? We start talking. Next thing we know, it's like we start, reading this book together. And then the guy wants to start talking. And then the guy starts saying thank you. And then the guy starts to feel like a human being. And I start feeling like all the bad stuff that I've done in my life, all the stuff that I got to live with for the rest of my life, it does serve a purpose. And I get to see why our pioneering men and women, our forefathers and our foremothers, this program is not meant to stop with me. This program is meant to be passed on to the multitudes to read this book with them. This power is abundant. I don't get that by just pouring coffee in secretary meetings. It's the intensive work with another alcoholic that not just keeps me sober, but keeps me happy and keeps me joyful and keeps me free. It keeps connecting the dots with me. I keep in that book. I keep getting into the stories, right? I love this thing so much, so much, and then I get back into the car and I never ever bring up the corn dog resentment. And Sean never asks about it because it's not important to me anymore. And he probably didn't care about it in the first place. But we're in a different level, man. We're talking about the new guy that I was talking to, and he's talking to the new guy that he was talking to. And like, what a great gig this is. And then the most inappropriate humor all the way back to the recovery house, man, and listen to the tapes to Johnny and Larry Thomas, God rest his soul, and Sandy Beach and all these guys, Tom I and Howard P and all these wonderful Don and all these wonderful speakers, and all these wonderful stories. And we get back there, man, and I'd start sleeping. I got out of that recovery house, man, and I started doing Alcoholics Anonymous, started living this program. You guys told me to sit in the front in the meetings. I sit in the front. You guys told me to shoot for the stars. I go back to school. I went back to school. I don't know what I'm doing. You guys told me just go, just show up, do the work, ask questions. Don't be afraid of what people think of you. And I start doing that. I start coming up with, I go, I get degrees. It turns out like I'm starting to do math that's like borderline theoretical. I'm an engineering major. I'm doing all this crazy stuff. I got kids. I'm a soccer dad. I'm a PTA dad. I'm a chaperone dad. You know, the one story that's really cool about this, I has given me so much. So yeah, Eric, you need a fill in for Sunday afternoon. You got it. You got it. You know, you guys need a ride. No problem. When I'm in Akron on that trip, you know, I, uh, uh, I love it. I'm on that porch. I'm on that porch with my son Ethan. That porch where all of these people went, came in, left. And I'm sitting there talking to him, and I'm like, "What'd you think of that tour, bud? It's kind of crazy." He's like, kind of seems like, kind of sounds how I grew up. Lots of people in and out of that house. So grateful to this, you know, so grateful to this program. Last week, 1 week ago today, actually, we were up in Seattle. I'll end with this. We were up in Seattle. A good friend of mine was doing a speaker meeting up there in a little town called Port Orchard outside of Seattle across the Sound. And the story behind this meeting was that Danny had gotten a call from his daughter, who's a normal girl, like her best friend started to drink alcoholically and was having a lot of problems. And Danny knew a person named Derek at this meeting, and he referred over like this number. You need to call Derek. You need to get in touch. And Danny got her in touch with a woman that started taking her through the steps. And Danny was invited to be the monthly speaker at the birthday night where this woman was getting a 1-year chip. And Danny's daughter, who's this woman's best friend, if you're following the timeline here, lives in South Carolina. Danny's daughter flew out. Danny's been sober 4 years. So there was this lunch that we had in Bar Harbor, Washington. And I'm sitting back and I'm just looking at this whole thing. I'm looking at Danny, and it's just got this joyful smile, just content, easy, just happy, just this thing. I'm looking at AA and Human Skin, and I'm looking at Danny, and I'm looking at him talk to his daughter, holding his granddaughter, and I look over and I see this girl that I don't know celebrating a year, and she's got a 3-year-old daughter. So I think at least for today, this program's 100% effective for her. If she just keeps doing what she's doing and keeps growing in the likeness of her creator and keeps in this book and keeps in the steps and keeps trying to give this thing away, right? Like, why wouldn't it work for her? You know, the value of these steps for me, man, has been just the fact that, you know, it's the first time in my life where I've been able to not care what you think for a little bit and just tell you the truth and trust in this power. And I don't even know that I'm doing it. That's the magic in step five for me. That's the magic of step nine. It's that long walk with God, that holding God tight. You know, what seemed to be a flimsy reed turned out to be the loving and powerful hand of God, right? Like, to have those experiences and to be able to step back and be like, man, I made it. I'm okay. And I feel pretty good about it. I tell guys all the time, I wish, brother, Mr. New Person, I wish I could give you this jacket of recovery and just let you wear it for a minute and just let you feel what we got here. And I would do it in a second, but there's work to be done, man. You gotta do this thing. And we got to talk about how nuts we are. We got to talk about Jim, the car salesman. We got to talk about why whiskey made sense in that milk. We got to talk about why changing a brand of environment. We got to talk about what my head does to me. Why am I too tired to go to a meeting? Why am I too tired to work with that person? What BS is my head filling me up with today? Because that's what I got to pray about. And then I got to start pausing a lot more. This thing tells me I got to quit fighting anything and everybody. Well, how do I get to that spot? But for right now, let's just read this book. Well, let's just start doing it tomorrow, just like we're doing it today. And then hopefully we all get to sit at some little restaurant in Northwestern Washington and get to see what Alcoholics Anonymous looks like. Thank you guys so much for letting me be here and share. And I love you guys, man. God bless.